There was melee at this local play place. Tonight at 6 o'clock on Reaction News. Good evening, ladies and gents. We go live with this officer. Sir, can you tell us what happened, please?
It was really trivial.
Well, wow. Tell us what you really think.
Police say in the latest fight here, a 16-year-old girl provoked an adult at a birthday party.
As silly as that sounds, the whole incident started over someone asking for a cigarette.
Friends tried to break up the fight.
The juvenile didn't take too kindly to it and began throwing salt and pepper shakers, climbing on tables, pushing children, pushing other adults. When you have people behaving in that fashion, we just can't accept that.
Welcome back, folks. Sergeant Be Safe here, and most of you guys already know that Rob You Blind and his crew recently escaped from prison. And since then, they've been running amok and causing chaos everywhere. Like I always say, if you see a crime, report it, so you don't become a victim of a crime of opportunity from Rob You Blind. Let me show you this example. The case of 220-225. The robbery on the run, the Uber grab gambit. We start this case off with seeing Maya outside on the phone having a good time, and her neighbors ordered something for special delivery. The delivery driver shows up, looks for the address, leaves the car parked in the middle of the street. This is the address I'm looking for. The car is left unlocked and running as he approaches the front door. Let me upload this picture to the app. Shows that I delivered it. Ooh. And with no one paying attention, Rob You Blind creeps right in.
Oh no, Rob You Blind is about to steal your car.
Easy pickings for a guy like me.
Hey, don't do that. That's my car. Oh no, he's stealing my car.
I better call Sergeant Be Safe.
He's gonna kill me now. I know I should have turned the car off and locked the door. Hello, Maya. What's going on? Okay. Calm down. Oh boy, I knew Rob You Blind was gonna cause trouble soon. You guys stay there. I'm on the way.
I was so scared, but I'm glad you're here now, Sergeant Be Safe.
Unfortunately, he's a victim. We're gonna take the report and get right on it and track it down. Rob You Blind makes it back to his secret hideout where they begin to paint the car to change it into a different color.
I can't believe it. That was too easy. It's all mine. My plan is complete. I'll have it all.
You fool! I know it may be inconvenient and bothersome, but delivery drivers, please lock the doors and turn the vehicle off when making deliveries. Don't become a victim of auto theft or something more serious. Now I have work to do. I have to find these bad guys and stop these crimes. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another weekly episodic episode of your podcast, Black and Blue. I am your host. I'm your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker's favorite baker. I'm also Ecclesiastics. Yes, I'm the coldest code switching detective, and I'm here for you. Spell my name, C-L-E-E, spells continuing law enforcement edutainment, because we're here to educate and entertain. So I hope you guys are too. Thank you guys for tuning in. Again, this is the podcast Black and Blue, where we go live weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we go live with the special guest that's either a first responder or in law enforcement, whether they're rookie, seasoned, or retiree. And we talk about their trainings, their experiences, and their publications. And we're not going to fall short today. We're streaming on 7 different platforms, ladies and gentlemen. That's right, 7. So, most of the time, I can't see all the comments, but I can see the comments that are put in the comment section. So if you have a question, because this is a live interactive interview, make sure you put it in the comment section. It's about a 5 to 10 second delay from the time that you post until the time that we see it, but we'll get to it as fast as we can if we can, all right? If you're looking for that shout out, make sure you put your name and where you're from in the comment section, and we'll give you that shout out that you're looking for, all right? This platform is sponsored by One Way Publishing. One Way Publishing is the publishing company that, for one, brought you the Sergeant Be Safe cartoons that you saw in the beginning of this, beginning of the podcast here, this intro. It also is the platform. It's the sponsorship for the podcast Black and Blue. Black and Blue. If you ever wanted to be a guest, workwithclee.com. The website scrolling below, and it's also in the comment section for One Way Publishing. One Way Publishing also is where I got to write my 5 books, and I have 2 that are digital. And One Way Publishing also has their own clients that are able to make their dreams come true. They became published authors. They're the book publishing company. Their motto is they can turn a mere thought into a book that's bought. So if you ever wanted to write your own fiction, nonfiction, mystery, autobiography, cookbook, comic book, whatever it may be, you should reach out to them. If you wanted to be a voiceover for the Sergeant Be Safe cartoon, reach out to them. If you wanted to be a guest featured here on the platform yourself, make sure you reach out to One Way Publishing. One Way Publishing will make your dreams come true. All right, we got to get that information out there, get that sponsorship. I hope I didn't forget anything. I know I always do, but this will also be uploaded on Spotify. If you got, for you listeners out there, you spotted your Apple and Spotify listeners out there, this will be uploaded once we're complete. So you guys, make sure you guys tag, like, and share. Tag, like, share, let your friends know about it so we can get that information out there. Likes are free. Make sure you hit that like button so we can get this information out. We're having a good time here. I got a special guest. I got him on the show. I'm happy to have him here. I'm excited to have him. I hope you guys are too. Some of you may know him. Others of you may not. But we're going to learn about the power of what Supply the Why and why that is important. Yes, that is the title of today's program, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about that and many other things here on the podcast Black and Blue. And so, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, our special guest has over 21 years of law enforcement experience. He's the current interim chief of police at his local department. He's taught things such as defensive tactics, ICAT, other things like that. He's got a master's degree in emergency and crisis management, ladies and gentlemen. He's also the president and CEO and chief facilitator of Supply the Why. And we're going to discuss that here momentarily. Supply the Why has been featured in Forbes magazine, Shout Out LA, the Brockton Enterprise, I hope I said that correctly, and the Patriot Leader. Our special guest also talks about such topics as excited delirium, race relations, and use of force, just to name a few. I can't talk about all of them right now because I will still be going on and on and on, and we're not here for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce our special guest, Din Jenkins. Din, let me get up. Computer's frozen. Let me get him on here. We got him on the stage right now. Din, how's it going? Thank you for making yourself available.
Hey, Clee, what's happening, man?
Oh, man, I'm having a great time. I hope I didn't mess it up too much, but I hope you're doing good. You're able to be here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Absolutely. First of all, you did an outstanding job. You got most of that right. Some of the towns we have up here in Massachusetts are a little difficult to pronounce, but you did all right, brother.
Thank you. I tried.
So a little bit about myself. So I, like you said, I have 21 plus years of law enforcement experience. I am a father of 3 wonderful children. You can see a couple of their pictures behind me when they were a lot smaller and definitely a little more clingy to dad at that age. Yep. Now they're off, they're doing their own thing, and they have their own friends groups, and they're doing well in the world. I spend my day-to-day, like you said, I am the interim Chief of Police for the Boston Housing Authority Police Department and Public Safety Department.
Okay.
And we are a specialized quasi-municipal agency. So what that means is we are specialized, meaning that most of our jurisdiction resides in the Boston Housing Authority developments. And we have approximately 60 different developments, and we have just under 60,000 residents and stakeholders that we serve. So it's really a city within the city of Boston.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like, and that, I mean, that one of our hot topics on this platform is community relations and community policing. And there's no better way to do it when you're dealing with the public right there with housing one-on-one. You're dealing with them face to face pretty much every day. Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're 100% right. Even our headquarters it's nestled into one of the developments. Okay. So we are very much part of the community. And we're part of the landscape, and we're proud to be that.
Good. It's good to hear. Good to hear, especially in these kind of times when everyone's asking, where are the police? How come they're not involved? And you're right there, right in the heart of it. So shout out to you and your entire department. But let me backtrack a little bit. Let me ask you this question. What gave you the burning desire to actually want to get into law enforcement? Where'd that niche come from and that feel inside?
All right. So this answer, it's going to be a little underwhelming. So I did not grow up wanting to be a police officer. I have to say, being a young black kid that grew up in the suburbs of Boston, I was a teenager when Rodney King happened.
Okay. And
like most people of that age, that kind of shaped my view of police, and it was not in a favorable way, to be honest with you.
I understand.
And that, so that kind of molded me. I grew up wanting to be really a gym teacher and a coach, because all I wanted to do was coach basketball and football. And I thought that was going to be my way of giving back. And I ended up getting into law enforcement a little bit later in life, basically because I needed a job with steady paycheck and benefits is essentially why I got into this. So I got in for all the wrong reasons, but let me tell you more importantly, Clee, why I stayed. I stayed because once I got into this line of work, I realized that people that look like you and I, we need people to advocate for us. We need people to tell us the truth about what policing is and kind of filter out all the noise that sometimes the media and some of the major outlets would have you believe about what people that do this job are really like. And I really found a passion in humanizing the badge and really bridging gaps between marginalized communities and the police. And it's been something that's it became a burning desire. It did not start out that way.
Hey, I love asking that question because everyone has a different story. Everyone thinks that, when I came of age and I saw that, the local cop movies at the time, the Lethal Weapons or the Die Hards, that, I knew at age 4, 5, 6, 7, I was going to grow up and be a cop. And then you come to find out that sometimes it wasn't until you got your first ride along or you had a positive interaction, a negative interaction. We've had many people who actually had negative interactions with law enforcement, and they wanted to get into it because they wanted to actually counteract their negative interaction and give out positive energy to do that. And like you said, you got in for what you said to be all the wrong reasons at that time, and then found out that you were what this profession needed, and you made it all the way to the top spot, giving back and something, being the face and giving permission for other people to come along the way as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And if I could just touch upon something you said, one of the reasons why I got into the defensive tactics portion of my career was for exactly what you said. I had some incidents that I was on the wrong end of that were unjust and it just quite frankly unfair, and I was violated. And
gotcha.
Well, I decided to get into defensive tactics so I could help teach police officers the right way, how to use force the right way, how to use the discretion that we have as police officers the right way. Right. So you're spot on with sometimes the biggest motivator is when something unjust happens to you. And if you have the makeup and the intestinal fortitude to be the kind of person that says, you know what, I don't want to talk about what other people need to do. Right. I'm going to step up and I'm going to be part of the change. So that resonates with me, Clee. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a big deal, and those are the kind of stories that need to be shared more often, instead of being shadow banned as often this profession is or can be. But I want to ask you this. So we talk about supply the why. And I think that term is so simple. It seems like it's so simple. And the term, it seems like it makes so much sense. And you developed the phrase. I know it's trademarked and it's all to you. Tell us what supply the why is in your own words.
Supply the why. It speaks to the importance of explaining your point of view in a way that other people can, they don't always have to agree with you,
right?
But there should be a pathway to lead people to understand where you're coming from. So that's what supplying the why is. So you're supplying the reason for your thought processes and some of the way that you move, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. So this all came to fruition shortly after George Floyd.
Okay.
So in my community, we have a robust minority population in the town of Stoughton, Massachusetts, which is where I'm from, and at the time where I was a police officer. Mm-hmm. And obviously, like every place else in America and probably even the world, people were very upset with what happened to George Floyd, as they should have been. Mm-hmm. And I had a contingent of young adults, some teenagers, people that knew me when I was in my role as a school resource officer. Mm-hmm. And as you know, Cleve, being somebody who's worked in that role, if you do that right, you build lifelong bonds with people.
Yep.
And people will come back to you, and people will share things with you, and they will look for your counsel when things like that happen, when they need a safe place and they need somebody that they can ask difficult questions of, that they know are that they know that person knows that it's coming from a good place and a place of love. So some of these young adults reach out to me because they needed a spaced event, and that was actually my first ever Zoom call.
Okay.
And it was such a powerful conversation. I said, something, there's something to this. Yeah. Where you have people that represented the Black Lives Matter ideology, so to speak, mm-hmm. But it wasn't like what most people would think Black Lives Matter was. These were very reasonable, very educated young folks that just needed some questions answered about use of force, applications of force, how police officers view a bad use of force. So I was able to educate them on what you and I know, that nobody hates a bad police officer more than good police officers.
Absolutely.
So even being able to share that with them was extremely powerful, and it was a conversation that was filled with some aha moments, and that spawned the birth of Supply the Why.
Gotcha. And so, and you're leading the charge on that. I know the president and facilitator, but what are some of the common barriers that you have seen while you've been out there moving the needle forward with Supply the Why, with maybe within in any agency that may come in and have their questions, or whatever barriers that you may see with any public or community member?
All right. So there was a lot there. Let me take little bites of that, Clee. So one of the biggest obstacles that you face is human emotion and bias.
I like that. Yeah.
And the way that you address those things is we start out by just acknowledging the existence of them. Mm-hmm. So I teach a class regularly called cultural considerations. Mm-hmm. And when I'm teaching cultural considerations, the very first thing I say is, we're going to talk about biases. We all have them. We're going to acknowledge that we have them. We're going to acknowledge their existence. But what makes us different, and what we're going to talk about today, is how to manage those biases, and how to make sure that when they pop into our minds, like they do for everybody, you say, all right, I see you, I feel you. Now let's dig a little deeper as to why are you popping into my mind? Why are you trying to guide my behavior in a certain way that may or may not be proper and just?
Right.
So by acknowledging the existence of it, a lot of times that allows people to kind of cool their temperature. And when you can cool the temperature in a room, Clee, people become more receptive to having an open and honest conversation. Right. The second thing we do is we treat these conversations like Vegas. So I ask everybody what we talk about in this room needs to stay in this room respectfully. we can't have people if we have people judging people and it turns into hurt feelings and everybody's looking for a reason to be a victim. These conversations will not work.
Right.
So we have an unspoken. Actually, we have an informal agreement that everybody in that room is expressing their viewpoints for the very best of reasons, even if it's something that's unpopular, even if it's something that seems a bit polarizing. The agreement is that we're all in there with the intention to seek to understand somebody else's journey and somebody else's path. So, I could go on and on about obstacles, but those are two of the big ones that we address right away. And it really does it really does wonderful things as far as breaking down walls and allowing people to open up and share, and more importantly, to open up and hear their conversational partners in that space.
Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that what resonated with me is you have the honor code system in the classroom to where we're gonna lay it all out on the table, be as honest as we can, be as real as we can. We're not here to intend to hurt feelings, but feelings may be involved one way or another. But we're looking for the greater good in this conversation. And once we get all that out, and the temperature in the room kind of can dissipate to a level that's a little bit more comfortable, then we can have the honest conversation. I know that the tough conversations are very hard to have, but they're necessary as well, because that's where the learning is. That's where the understanding comes from. And I know that you've been in those tough war rooms, per se, to have those difficult discussions, and those difficult discussions have led to, I'm pretty sure, leading to presumably better things. And still, they said you planted seeds that are still growing into full-fledged trees that are producing fruit.
Oh, 1000%. And you hit the nail on the head as far as the importance of these difficult conversations. Some of the biggest failings we see in agencies, and we'll keep it with law enforcement agencies, is these inability or the avoidance of these difficult conversations. How many times? Well, I don't want to put you out there, but just, I'm sure you've been in your journey, you've seen times where a situation turned into a full-on fire that could have been handled if somebody just had the moral courage and intestinal fortitude to address it when it was just an ash on some dry paper. If somebody just came in and stomped it out and just grabbed the involved parties and said, "Hey, we're gonna hash this out right now. We're going to have a conversation about it, and we're going to, again, seek to understand one another." You could have prevented something that ended up being a much bigger issue by just embarking on those conversations sooner.
Yeah. So do you have any testimonies or stories that you could share with us on, having those conversations where they kind of, you put the fire out before it happens, or that you can see what's coming down, and, let's get ahead of it before it turns and the snowball effect happens, and we got a boulder instead of still the smaller snowball that we can manage?
Absolutely. So I'm going to try to give an example that doesn't violate the rule I just talked about sometimes when we're in these spaces, we try not to put people out there, but
this will be a hypothetical. There we go.
So, this is a real one, but I think I can keep it vague enough. So again, at the aftermath of George Floyd, I think every municipality that had any kind of minority population had some semblance of civil unrest, protest, or what have you. So the town of Stoughton was no different. So one of the things that we did, and I think that we did well, was we met with people that were planning on protest and planning on having some sort of demonstration ahead of time whenever possible. And what we did and what we learned was we were able to kind of humanize the badge. So before we show up in our uniforms and we're there, and it almost has that, like us first them type mentality, we were able to sit down at the table. And now it's like, instead of, this is Sergeant Jenkins, then it was, hey, I'm Din Jenkins. I'm your neighbor. I live in town too. You might see me around. I coach football here. Let's have a conversation about what you're looking to accomplish and how we can help you accomplish it as safely as possible.
Right.
Now, you'd be amazed by just having that conversation and just showing people that, that A, we're empathetic, and B, that we want you to be able to protest or to express yourselves, but we want it to be done safely. We want it to be done respectfully, and we want to make sure that you're able to get your point across, but we can't infringe on the rights of others.
Right.
That was an unbelievable way to, again, keep the temperature of some of these demonstrations at a level where everybody could live with it.
Gotcha. And I know that helped mitigate a whole storm that could have potentially arose. So kudos.
It typically does. It typically does. If you can meet with what we call like the captains of these events, the people that is a quote unquote leaders ahead of time, you can put a little onus on them. So if something goes off the rails, you can say, hey, listen, we had an agreement, right? Like you came in, we talked. Remember, I'm wearing this uniform, but it's still Dean. We sat down at the table. You gave your word. You'd be amazed how many people, if you can remind them that they gave their word and they are now they're not holding up their end of the bargain. It's a good way of almost deputizing those people, and they become your agents because they don't want to lose. They don't want to lose face either. Like people genuinely try to keep their word in those spaces. So just leveraging basic human decency and interactions, and before these protests go bad was a great way of us accomplishing that.
Gotcha. And when you were running the podcast, Supply the Why, were you sharing conversation topics, or did you have presentations, or how did you go ahead and disclose this information for not only your guests or your viewers, but also anyone who was watching the show or anyone who's local?
So we'll talk about the podcast first. So on the podcast, what I did was I tried to come up with relevant topics that were typically topics that people had a difficult time discussing. So one of our most successful episodes was about cancel culture.
Okay.
When that phrase really just kind of became a thing as to what that was.
Yep.
And it was myself and two very dear trusted friends. I said, let's tackle this. Even though none of us knew anything about it, we said we're just gonna go into it and we're gonna talk about it, but we're gonna use the basic tenets of how to attack a difficult conversation. To understand your conversational partners. Try to eliminate ego and emotion from the conversation and just talk about what exactly it is, and then try to figure out what the goal of cancel culture is. And I got to say, the reviews that we got on that episode, and again, if anybody wants to see it, it's out there on YouTube, on the Supply the Why page. It was unbelievable how many people reach out to me offline, how many people came on and they were part of the conversation, and it just showed that there really is power in having these conversations. And in the worst case scenario is, we can agree to disagree. Yeah. Like we can bring that old saying back that seems to have just kind of gone away. Like people don't agree to disagree anymore. Like you disagree with somebody on their religion or their political candidate, and people are throwing away lifelong friendships over this stuff. And to me, it's madness.
Yeah. It's a shame. Again, I know it seems like that's the latest thing, the latest fad, where if we don't agree, we can't be friends. We can't, everyone's not going to be the same. Everyone's not going to think the same, walk the same, talk the same, wear the same clothes. You got to agree to disagree on some things, and that's where the growth is, and that's how you learn. So I'm glad that you shared that, and you get that information out there. It's very important.
It really is. I can't stress it enough. I realize it's not easy to do, which is why there's a space for people like me to operate and to come into people's organizations, civic groups, things like that. And I help facilitate these conversations when maybe a third party is the best way to have somebody, kind of, I call myself a conversational tour guide, kind of bring people, from point A to point B in the hopes of maybe not solving everything, but of the hopes of, again, getting it to the point where people can at least have these conversations. And of course, they can always call me back for as many iterations as they desire to help guide them through this.
Yeah. And you have any examples that you can share with us, guiding these conversations involving law enforcement officers or the police and race relations? I know that that's a touchy subject. A lot of times no one wants to talk about it, even want to think about it, but it's a very true topic. And it's a very true issue that it deserves its own conversation itself.
Sure. So I mean, I can give you basic examples. So when I've delivered keynotes and when I do, public speaking events, I basically can talk about my own experience. So just like I said from the outset, you're not talking to a guy who grew up with a line of cops in my family. In fact, I was the first one in my immediate group of family, and I can tell you right now, Clee, my parents were pissed. They were not excited when I told them that this is what I wanted to do. My father grew up with a very healthy distrust of police, and he had reason to do so. Quick story.
Yeah.
In South Boston, or in Boston, Massachusetts, there was something called busing. I don't know if you heard of that. Busing was essentially forced busing was when they wanted to desegregate certain school districts within the city.
Okay.
So my father had the distinction of being the first Black computer room supervisor for Gillette World Shaving Headquarters in South Boston.
Okay.
South Boston at the time was a place where if you looked like us, it was highly advised for you to avoid that section of the city. So here my father is. He's in this. He's working in Gillette. It's a very much a neighborhood type place to work. And now he's in charge of people that don't want him there.
Yeah. And
he had to endure things that most people today couldn't even fathom. As far as blatant racism, this is before human resources was what it is today, and somebody could call you an N-word, and they were just told, hey, you shouldn't do that, and that would be the end of it. It wasn't like today where you get fired and this, that, and the other thing. And my father endured years of that.
Wow.
And the point I'm making is that shaped his view of people that didn't look like us. My father was he was unjustly beaten by the police when he was a young adult, and the guy hit him in the jaw with his nightstick, and then said my father tried to attack him and then locked him up. I mean, just absolute wildness. And my father had a difficult time thinking that I was going to be part of that machine. So the challenge was for me to try to explain to him, I'm not going to be part of the machine, Dad. I'm here to try to change the machine. Because we can sit and complain about it all we want. Until you have people with boots on the ground that are on the inside, taking a hard look at this thing, this is how it's going to flow. So you got to have people that have the courage to jump into this thing to kind of try to right the ship. And that was the conversation with my parents about why I ended up staying in law enforcement.
Wow. Well, shout out to your dad for enduring those tough times. I know they weren't easy, and I know it wasn't something very popular to actually go through it and then see his own son actually put on the navy blue and the badge and actually wear it, and it solidifies something different. Shout out to you for actually going through it and finding your niche and becoming a pariah.
Well, I appreciate that, and as far as my father passed away in 2019. But I can tell you this, the look of pride on his face the first time I got my badge pinned on me, he came around, Clee. He came around, and I think that he'd be very proud of his youngest son and some of the work that I've done. And some of that has most definitely been in his honor for what he endured and what people that came before us endured.
Yeah, man. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm happy to hear it. I'm glad that what started out as what could be considered a tragedy or a tragic story or something that we don't want to think about or so long ago kind of shapes into what we're talking about sitting here on the platform right now. And like I said at the beginning, we're giving permission for the other generations to come forward and move the needle that much more forward. What would you say to someone who's a young man, young woman who's watching right now, who's in high school, college, and they're, law enforcement is the most popular as it used to be. They're teetering, got one toe in, one toe out. They don't know what to do. What would you say to that individual to see if law enforcement was for them?
So the first thing I would say, again, it's going to be a little unpopular. I'm going to lead with a little bit of negative and say this job is not for everybody, and it's not for the faint of heart.
I agree.
So as somebody who's building a department, as somebody that has a very specialized mission, all right, because at Boston Housing Authority, one thing that we lead with, Clee, is we are not arresting our way out of all these problems. It's just not mathematically possible. And we lead with that. So if you think you're going to come and you're going to work on my team and you're just going to show up and kick doors in and lock people up, and that's all you're going to do, I don't want you. I don't need you. If that's what you think you're going to do. There's other places that might want somebody that has that mindset. I need you to collaborate with the community. I need you to speak and be part of community meetings. I need you to embrace diversion programs when it's appropriate.
Right.
And I still need you to lock people up, because some people do got to go to jail. I'm not saying that's not the case, but I need people that are outside the box thinkers, and I need people that want to be part of the community and partner with the community, not just occupied territory. Yeah. So I would also talk about that. I would, from there, what I like to do is I like to ask people, what brought you into this room? Why are you here having this conversation with me? Because there's something about law enforcement that's intriguing to you, and I want to know what that is. I'm dying to know what that is. And I ask that question, Clee, and I sit there and I shut my mouth and I listen. I give them my undivided attention, because I want people to also know, when you work here, you will be heard. You'll be treated with respect and dignity. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to come in and we're going to do everything you want to do. I'm not saying that at all. But you will be treated with respect. You will be heard. And when you have a good idea, regardless of your rank, you will be empowered to run with that. And to some folks, Clee, that's scary. Some people just want to talk. They don't want to. They don't want to have to take the action. But on this team, we build leaders by giving them the empowerment and the training and the self-belief that we're going to stand behind you, and we're going to help you be successful when you come up with something that is worthy of us rolling out. So it's exciting. I think you can tell by the way by how excited I am talking about this, about how much I enjoy giving that opportunity back, because I can tell you right now, I worked for several chiefs and several bosses. I was not treated with that respect sometimes when I had good ideas. I worked for people that no idea was a good idea unless it was their idea.
Yeah.
And I've remembered that throughout my journey. And I said, you know what, back when you have your water cooler talk and you have your king for a day conversations, when you're talking to your line mates, like if I was in charge, I would do this, that, and the other thing. I let that guide me in my leadership style. And I make sure that I never forget that I said that. And I double down by keeping people close that were also patrol officers when I said that. And I make sure that they feel comfortable checking me if I even remotely slide off course.
I like that 100%. Yeah. And one thing I learned in the Army, that's what it reminds me of, is a sergeant of mine. I'm not going to say his name. I know sometimes he watches. He may not want me to put him out there, and that's fine. He's a former sergeant, but he said you can always learn something from one of your platoon sergeants or squad leaders at that time. He said whether you like them or not, whether that you believe they're a good leader or not, the bad leaders, or who you perceive to be the bad leaders, they teach you everything. And I'm like, how's a bad leader teaching me something? They're not even doing anything. They're teaching you what not to do if you were in that position. And the good leaders are the models that you want to be like. So you mesh those two and you become your version of a better leader than both of them. Preach
it, Clee. Preach it. That's 100%. And again, you're talking to somebody. When I applied to be a sergeant at a place I used to work at, they actually sat there and tried to tell me that I wasn't assertive enough to be a sergeant. You've known me for 45 minutes. Does me being assertive, would you describe me as somebody who's not assertive, or somebody that would get walked on?
That did not cross my mind one bit during this conversation.
Well, that's what they tried to sell me on for that. And then I tried to be a defensive tactics instructor at the same agency. And they told me that I wasn't qualified enough to be a defensive tactics instructor, even though that I was the only practicing martial artist. I was one of two practicing martial artists in a department of about 50.
Oh, wow.
And so I had all these skills. I'm a skilled public speaker. I was a captain of my football team in college, so I had leadership skills. All of these different things, platoon leader in the academy, all of these different skills, and I'm being told all this craziness. Now, here's the difference, Clee. And if you're listening out there, I want you, if you take nothing else home from what I'm talking about, hear me on this. There is a department, an organization out there that wants what you have, and they want what you bring to the table. And if you're not working at one that can celebrate and foster your career, then you find one that will. And I did that. So I went to another agency in another state. I was there for 5 months, Clee, and they were talking about making me a defensive tactics instructor. And this was a major agency in New England. I won't say the name. Actually, I will say it. It was the Manchester, New Hampshire Police Department.
Okay.
I had a sergeant ask me if I'd be interested in being a defensive tactics instructor. He said, it's probably too early, but you should, this is a space you should be in. Wow. And I also had somebody in that same agency, and it almost makes me want to well up to tell you this. They asked me, they were like, Dean, where have you been? We have been looking for somebody like you for years. And the validation of going to an incredible police department like Manchester, New Hampshire PD, and having all these unbelievable police officers that have done all these great things, and somebody actually thought that much of me to say that to me after getting kicked around at a previous agency, that, in my opinion, set me on the course to be where I am today. Gotcha. That little bit of self-belief that I was able to get from these people that really, they didn't know me. They just kind of knew a little bit about my body of work. They knew a little bit about my attitude. They knew about my ability to work hard. Because that's just flip side of this coin, folks. If you're not doing the work, the problem isn't the agency. You got to be willing to do the work. You got to be willing to take the criticism and get the feedback. You got to be humble about it. But if you're doing that, great things can happen. Somebody out there will value you, and somebody out there will find a way to help you shine and find your path. So please hear me on that if you hear nothing else, folks.
Yeah, I like that. Again, it goes back to the old phrase. Some of you may have heard it, and maybe you haven't. You go where you're celebrated. Don't stay where you're tolerated.
That's a great one. Yeah, I'm gonna put that in my toolbox, Clee.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help. But I like also what you said a while ago is with your agency that you don't want to just have door kickers, even though that sometimes that's fun and doing all the fun stuff with law enforcement. That's all fun and good. But with the fun, you got to be a problem solver. And that's what I heard you say, that you want a team full of problem solvers too, to be in out there with boots to the streets, collaborating with the community, coming up with being a part of the community, not a part of the community, being right there with them and hearing these conversations, doing these interactions, knowing when they say little somebody's nickname or whatever, you know exactly who they are. You know who their parents are. You know where they live. You know everything. It just clicks. It's just one of those things that you get from having boots on the streets.
So if I could speak to that and I could throw out a word, it's going to be a word that a lot of people aren't going to expect. And that word is diversity. All right. So let me break it down for you. So when we hear diversity, we think about, different faces in different places, right? That's usually how diversity means, like different colors, different religions, sexual orientations, and all that. Yes, that is diversity at its surface. But another way to apply diversity is diversity of thought, diversity of problem-solving skills, diversity of tools in your toolbox, Clee. So that is something that not only do I look for when we have our interview process with people, because you're going to do a lot of talking in our interviews. And it's not going to be yes or no questions. I'm going to ask you some open-ended questions because you're going to have to talk your way through it.
Yes.
And you might not have all the answers at the time, but what we're looking for is people that I can develop into somebody who has the humility to realize that you might not have all the answers, or who is open to realizing that maybe arrest isn't the best method all the time.
Right.
And diversity of options is something that I don't think gets talked about enough. I think people need to understand, like, there's a whole cornucopia of options that we have in order to help people. Sometimes it's arrest. Sometimes it is a referral. If someone's suffering from food insecurity, right? Like maybe we can get them connected with a food bank. If somebody is drug or alcohol addicted, maybe we can connect them to services. If somebody is unhoused, maybe we can find a way to get them hooked into a shelter or some sort of housing. Like, there's all different ways that we can help people beyond an arrest, and we can do it in a way where maybe, just maybe, the services we give them put them on a path that'll take them away from whatever criminality might have brought us to them, as opposed to locking somebody up And next thing you know, they're out later that afternoon or the next day, and they're doing the same thing, but they're doing it a little better because they've corrected the mistakes.
Yeah.
So diversity is a word that I like, and I love all the different forms of diversity, not just different faces in different places. Clay.
Yeah, this past Thanksgiving, I met someone who I've known for a long time, but we actually got to sit down and have a conversation over some good food. And he's got a diversion program that's kind of a little bit out of the norm. But he suggested to me, he said, you're dealing with all these juvenile, especially in particular males that are teenage males, don't have fathers or a father role model, and they're getting into all the juvenile trouble. They come and go as they please. They're not all the way out there yet as far as being bad or in the criminal justice system, but that you can see them starting to teeter. So basically he's saying, if you ever interact with any of them to the point where they either get a small arrest or you can avoid arresting them by having them do community service, you can bring them to my camp. And he's got a whole curriculum where he develops them in certain time right after school. He has ways to get them to there, back home, get them fed, get them things where he teaches them skills, blue collar skills and working as a team and making sure he gives them projects to where it could be done individually if it needed to be, but he finds ways to get this kid and this kid who don't know each other. They have to work together to get this project done in the timeline. And they find out these two different kids who were from two different sides of town who don't like each other end up becoming inseparable. And not only that, it fixes the problem because they find a skill and a thrill for her doing something they never even thought of before.
I love that. And I want to touch upon something you said, where you said you have two kids from different parts of the town or different neighborhoods, right? Mm-hmm. And on the surface, they don't like each other, right? Mm-hmm. On the surface. But it's not that they don't like each other. They don't like the idea of the other person. There's a difference. There's a difference about not liking somebody and not liking the idea of where they're from or the idea of the neighborhood they're from, because they've been indoctrinated by by some of the folks in their community, and they've been poisoned, quite frankly. Right. That everybody from a certain area or from a certain development isn't worthy of dignity, of the same dignity and respect that we all would want. Right. So that's something that we need to actively, as a community. I'm going to say it especially as a Black community, we need to do a whole lot better on is treating each other with love, treating each other with dignity and respect. And then valuing the lives of one another. I think that there's a lot of space for improvement there. I'm just going to go ahead and say it.
Yeah. Put it out there, man. It needs to be said. You're having those difficult conversations that you're known for. I like it.
They never stop.
Yeah. So I know you had the podcast going on. You were simply the why and going out there public speaking. And now as interim chief of police and still instructor and making sure daily operations are done, you've got to be a very busy man. How do you balance all of this and still being able to be a positive force that humanize the badge, as we like to say, and move the needle forward? So as far as my work with Supply the Why and in that space and with that and coming from that lens, I'm not going to say it's easy, but I will tell you this, and it sounds so cheesy, but it's true. If you have a passion for something and you enjoy doing it, it doesn't seem like work. Yeah, I agree.
It really doesn't. Like, if I'm called to do a keynote, or if I'm called to do some sort of training, and I get to tell my story and I get to connect with people, because my story, especially here, is very unique. There are not very many people that look like me in law enforcement that are also police executives. There are not very many people that have my story. I did not want to do this, Clee. I did not want to be here when I was in college. I had people say, hey, you should take the police exam. I was that cat that was maybe, I'm talking down on police and saying some crazy things based on two or three bad interactions with police, but I ignored the thousands of positive interactions I had, or interactions that were just, mundane. Like, hey, how you doing, officer? How you doing, Dean? Like officers that would work details at sporting events I was competing in. and you know, once I kind of changed the way I thought about it, and I said, you know what, I'm letting 2 or 3 bad interactions color an entire profession of people. You know what I realized, Clee?
What's that?
I was doing the police what people do to me when they see me walk into a place.
Yeah.
I don't like it when people, not so much now, I'm a graybeard, but when I was young and I was in shape, and people looking at me and they say, hey, who's this, you know, this big game banger looking kid.
Yeah.
I just had the light bulb moment. I said, I'm painting all these police officers with this broad brush, and I'm doing them the same way people are doing me. So that was helpful, being able to have that realization. Yeah. And a lot of times that's what I do when I have these conversations with police officers, whether they're black, white, or in between. It's just helping them understand the danger of painting any group of people with a broad brush.
Right. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for sharing that much. 100%. So let me ask you this. In a perfect world, where do you see yourself, your agency, law enforcement in particular? It's a grand scope question. Supply the why in about 3 to 5 years, if things could be in a perfect world. What would you say? What would you like to see the vision of that?
Well, in a perfect world, not perfect for supply the why, there'd be less of a need for what I do with conversation facilitation.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for society as a whole to, at the very least, be able to return back to the agree to disagree mentality that I thought was a lot more rampant when I was younger than it is now. Everything now is if we don't agree, then we can't even interact.
Yeah.
We can't be friends.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, Clee, it hurts my heart when I see people, like, for example, like, you know, I have friends that are hardcore Republican friends. And this is not to talk about politics, folks. I'm just drawing an example here.
Mm-hmm.
And these are people who had me sleep over their house for years, and their parents fed us. We played together. We did all of these things, and there was a true relationship built on love.
Right.
For years. And I'm going to throw that away because I don't like who you voted for. I fail to see the logic in that. Like, you know, were they just fattening me up for the kill for 20 years, pretending they were my friend and pretending they love me and feeding me and coming to supporting me and me supporting them just so they can say, aha, I'm a racist. I fooled you. I don't buy that.
Right.
I don't buy that. And I really would like to see that go away, and for us to get back to the point where people can have differences, maybe even celebrate the differences and say, even though we don't see eye to eye on this, I still love you for who you are. I still value you. And I still, I see and I celebrate the differences between us. I would love for that to happen.
Yeah, that's a great vision. It's a great outcome. I mean, we often say we'd like to go back, but I mean, going back would cause us to actually take steps backwards. Building better, I think it would actually be, building towards that moment again, to have that again, and teaching the newer generations and things like that. You got a LinkedIn user. LinkedIn does that sometimes. Boom goes the dynamite. Well said. Keep being. I can't say that.
It's being awesome. So that is a very, very popular podcast called Be Awesome. I highly recommend it. It's about positivity, and it's about uplifting the human race.
Gotcha.
The gentleman that does that, Josh Peach, is somebody who gets flown around the country to deliver keynotes. He's great. I highly recommend people check out his podcast in addition to this one, and of course, Supply the Why.
Gotcha. There we go. And thank you for that correction. I definitely was going to butcher that. I thought that might have been a fraternity phrase or something. But Dean, hey man, I appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate you donating your time and coming on the show and explaining, having difficult conversations, explaining your viewpoint, explaining your views, explaining the things expressed, how you moving the needle forward here in law enforcement, how originally you give the basis and the burning desire of actually not wanting to get into it, then finding out this is where exactly you're supposed to be, and you're a change agent, you're making the difference in here, and you're giving permission for others to be like like you and to grow and climb the ladder even higher once you and I get off that ladder. But until we're still doing that, we're still moving the needle forward. And I may have forgot to ask you a question during this interview, or I may have jogged the memory on something else that you wanted to share with us. Is there anything else that you would like to share right now? The floor is yours.
Yeah, so if I could just take a few seconds, Clee, to just share a philosophy, something that's important to me as we log off for the night. I want everybody out there to remember your journey, remember what was important to you along the way. And if you are fortunate enough and you've done the work and you've been able to climb to a level in your respective organization where you are able to do for others and pave the way and maybe make the road a little smoother for somebody behind you, you're obligated to do that. Just like our ancestors did. Just like our mentors did. Don't be the person that makes it up to a certain level and pours kerosene on the rope and lights it on fire so people can't come up behind you. It's the opposite. Your job is to throw that ladder back over the wall and to help people get to where you are and exceed. That is what I'm challenging people to do. Help people get better, help people reach their goals, and to help people become the mentors that you would have wanted when you were coming up.
Beautiful. Couldn't have said it better myself. I love that. I know we've all at some point in our life wanted a mentor, someone just to tell us, I'll walk this way with you. I'll help you climb this. You don't want to go down that path. I think most of us, we've had a few that say you don't want to do this. Some of us have a very minor, not enough. I'll put it that way. To actually be that person for someone else is huge. Is very huge, and it's game changing. Absolutely.
100%. And again, it's an obligation.
Yep. And I know as we're winding down, Dean, is there if anyone wanted to reach out to you or wanted to schedule you to get you on either a podcast or know more about Supply the Why or get you to do some sort of public speaking event, how would they, do you have any contact information that you would want to share with anyone so they can reach out to you?
I do. So what I try to do is I want to direct people to my LinkedIn. Reach out to me through LinkedIn because, quite frankly, I want to know who you are if you're reaching out to me. I don't just blindly throw up my email address anymore. I learned the hard way on that.
So did I.
Hit me up on LinkedIn, which is what you did, Clee. Let's have a conversation. Let me learn a little bit about you. And yeah, and if there's a synergy there, then I am definitely open to have a conversation about how I can help and how I can help your organization reach a level where people feel comfortable embarking on these difficult conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you heard it first. Make sure you check out his LinkedIn if you have a serious inquiry about him or wanting to know more or the conversation. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Dean, I thank you for coming on the platform. I don't want to monopolize your time too much more. I know you got other busy things going on. You're a busy man. You're moving right and left, and I appreciate you coming on this platform and blessing us with your knowledge and wisdom. Hopefully this won't be the last time we have you featured on here, but thank you very much. Make sure you take care of yourself. Thank you.
Clee, thank you for the opportunity. It was an honor, and if you ever decided to have me back, I'd be honored to come back and contribute in any way I can. Thank you again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yep. And you go ahead and continue on and you enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll speak soon.
Absolutely. Thanks again. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Black and Blue, man. We had a wonderful discussion. We had Din Jenkins on here. He's the interim police chief at his local department. He wants game changers, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. If you're thinking about getting in law enforcement and you're in that area, make sure you guys actually consider what department you're going for so you can be the perfect fit for the perfect department to be the fit for you as well. So you guys can mesh and you can move that needle forward. This is the podcast Black and Blue, where we air weekly just for you at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we go live with a law enforcement officer or first responder, whether they're rookie, seasoned, or retiree. And we talk about their trainings, experiences, their publications. And we definitely did not fall short today. today. I want you to get those likes up. Make sure you guys tag, like, and share. Send these messages out to your friends. We will also be uploaded on Spotify, and there'll be weekly clips of this interview as well on various different platforms. So thank you guys. Tag, like, and share. We will see you next week. I got a special guest coming on here. He's no stranger to the platform. Some of you may have already known him from about a year or so ago. I'm not going to tell you who he is because I'm going to leave that cliffhanger right there for you so we can go ahead and get that thing going for next week. So make sure you guys tune in, all right? 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you guys. 10-4, over and out. You guys take care and enjoy the Sergeant Be Safe.
Sergeant Be Safe is inviting you to watch this exciting and fun podcast, Black and Blue. It airs weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's just for you. When we go live with a dynamic law enforcement officer or first responder, whether they're rookie, seasoned, or retiree. We talk about their trainings, experiences, and their publications. We've had tremendous guests already, and we have many, many more tremendous guests coming down the pipeline. You want to subscribe.
Sergeant Be Safe is here.
Black and Blue is on various podcasts, especially on YouTube, so make sure you guys subscribe. And don't forget about me, Sergeant Be Safe. I have my own channel too, so make sure you subscribe to that as well. We have many adventures, learning experiences, and we have fun while we do it. You guys don't want to miss it. Not only with the special guest that's being featured, you'll see video skits of me and the bad guys, Rob You Blind, Misdemeanor, Treacherous Tony, Chance Wilder, aka Wild Chance, and Sapphire Steel. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
I'm not a bad cop.
I never once said you were. It would be real simple if the problem was bad cops. It ain't.